11 women were sitting along the wall of a beauty shop in Memphis, and not one head in that room had gone gray. The youngest of the Black women in that row was 34 years old. The oldest was 71. A Saturday morning in August of 1962. 94 degrees outside and one fan going in the corner. Cover every face in that room and look only at the heads, and you could not tell which woman was which. That was not luck. It was a set of practices, some off a drugstore shelf, some out of a pantry that never had much in it, some costing nothing. 20 of them are on this list. Stage number 1, because number 1 is not a rinse and not a jar. It is what the other 19 stood on. Before we start, one thing about my own head. Mine is silver. It has been silver for a while now, and I have no plan to cover it. What is on this list did not stop mine, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But there is a difference between silver hair left to go and silver hair somebody is looking after, and that difference is almost entirely the scalp underneath it. I wash mine once a week and not more. I keep an oil on the scalp in parts, the way you will hear at number 10. I wrap it every night. I have never once pulled a strand out. So half of what follows is about holding the color, and half is about holding the hair. Two different jobs. The women in that shop did both at once, and so do I. Number 20. A bottle had sat on drugstore shelves across the South since before the First World War. Sage and sulphur compound, 50 cents. The label said, dampen a sponge, draw it through one strand at a time at night. By morning, the gray had gone quiet. The older Black woman in that house did not buy it once. It sat beside the talcum for 30 years. Sage carries tannins that lay a dark stain on the strand, and the stain builds on itself. One application does almost nothing. 20 across a year changed the whole head. The sulphur worked underneath, quieting the irritation that keeps a follicle inflamed. That is the pattern for this whole list. Nothing works in one night. Everything works in one decade. Number 19. When the black walnuts came down in October, the Black grandmother sent the children out for the hulls. Not the nuts, the green casing outside. They sat in a jar of boiling water on the back of the stove for 2 days, until the water went the color of cold coffee. Then 15 pours over the head. You could tell who had done it. Her fingertips stayed dark a week. Black walnut hull is one of the most aggressive plant dyes on this continent. It binds to keratin and does not let go. It stains a fence post and treats a gray strand the same way. The strongest thing here, and the one used least. Number 18. Sage on its own, without the drugstore. A teacup of dried leaves in a quart of water, boiled 20 minutes and cooled overnight. Saturday night, it went over the head after the wash, for the length of 2 songs on the radio. The Black woman doing this weekly was not doing anything new. An English herbal printed in 1653 stated plainly that sage causes the hair to become black. The practice crossed the ocean with that book and stayed in Alabama kitchens. Tannins again, plus a second thing. Sage calms the scalp, and a calm scalp carries less oxidative pressure. Oxidative pressure at the root is the entire mechanism behind graying. The next 2 are already sitting in your kitchen. Both work. One works about twice as well as the other, and almost nobody knows which. Before I tell you which one, this. Every method here is written out in The Complete Vault at blackgrandmasvault.com. Not the names, the actual amounts. How much sage to how much water, how long the walnut hulls sit, and which 2 should never run in the same week. blackgrandmasvault.com. Now, number 17. Number 17, nothing left that kitchen off Beale Street, and coffee least of all. The pot made at 5 was still on the stove at 4, twice as strong as anyone would drink. That was not waste. That was the rinse. Over damp hair, under a cotton cap for an hour. Coffee is full of chromogens, pigmented compounds that cling to anything porous, and a gray strand is far more porous than a dark one. Gray hair does not only lose color, it goes coarser and more open, and that grabs a stain faster than the hair around it, which is why a coffee rinse looks like it works faster on the gray. It does. Number 16. Same idea, with one addition nobody in that kitchen knew about. Strong black tea, steeped half an hour, poured over 20 times. The tannins in black tea do what coffee cannot. A tannin acts as a mordant, the word a dyer uses for what makes color grip instead of rinsing out. Anyone who dyed cloth in a wash pot in a black yard in the rural South understood that without the word, you do not only put the color on, you put something on that makes it stay, which is why the women who alternated tea and sage got a result that held. Number 15. From what went on the hair to what went in the body, which is where the real work was happening. Blackstrap molasses. The thick black syrup left at the bottom of sugarcane processing, the grade nobody wanted, a tablespoon before breakfast, and the children hated it. If you grew up in that house, you can still taste it, and I would bet you are making the face right now. The black grandmother taking it every morning was not thinking about her hair. It was there, and it cost nothing. But blackstrap molasses is one of the densest sources of copper in a poor pantry, and copper is not optional for hair color. It sits inside tyrosinase, the enzyme the body uses to make pigment. Without enough copper, that enzyme runs slow and output drops. 50 years of that spoon supplied what her follicles needed, and she never heard the word melanin in her life. The next 4 do the same job, and the cheapest is the strongest. Number 14. When the greens came out, the water they cooked in stayed. Pot liquor, drunk hot from a cup or sopped with cornbread. Every food writer for 100 years has called that a Southern habit and stopped there. Collards, turnips, and mustard greens lose most of their iron and folate into the water they boil in. Pour that out, and you keep the fiber and throw away the nutrition. Iron and folate shortage are 2 of the most reported drivers of early graying. So a black household in Mississippi drinking the liquor took a concentrated dose of those 2 nutrients 3 times a week. They were not eating differently from their neighbors. They were finishing the pot. Number 13, and it was the cheapest thing at the butcher counter. Once a week, and nobody was glad about it. Liver is the densest food source of vitamin B12 in an American kitchen, and a B12 shortage is the most consistently documented nutritional cause of premature graying there is. There are documented cases of hair regaining pigment after a B12 shortage was corrected. Not every case, but it happens, and the relationship runs both directions. Liver carries iron and copper in the same bite, so a black woman eating that weekly hit 3 of the 4 nutrients most tied to holding hair color for 15 cents. We are halfway. Past number 11, this stops being about what went in the body and starts being about the scalp itself, where the 2 biggest items are waiting. Number 12. There was a tin open when there was nothing else. Sardines and oysters, when they could be got, which, in the coastal black communities of Carolina, they could be. Oysters carry more copper per bite than almost any food on earth. Copper is not a supporting player in hair color. It sits inside the enzyme that makes the pigment. Sardines bring the same at a lower level, add B12, and keep without ice, which, in a house with no refrigeration, was why they were on the shelf. The foods a black household could afford were the foods richest in the 3 minerals that hold hair color. Number 11, and this one goes back furthest. Peas soaked overnight and cooked slow with whatever meat was in the house. Benny seed, which is what sesame was called in the Low Country, worked into wafers. Both crops came across the Atlantic on slave ships and were planted in Carolina soil by the people who carried them. Both are heavy in copper and iron. No single bowl of peas holds anybody's color. What holds it is a diet quietly high in copper and iron across 6 decades. The food side is laid out in the vault by the week, not by the meal. Number 10, and this is precise in a way most people get wrong. The grease did not go on the hair. It went on the scalp, in parts, a comb tail opening each row and a fingertip laying it down. And the ones that mattered had sulphur in them. Sulphur 8 in its yellow tin, and before that, the formula Madam C.J. Walker built her company on, petrolatum with sulphur worked into it. Walker did not build it to make hair long. She built it because women were losing hair to scalp infection before indoor plumbing. Here is the line to Gray. Chronic scalp inflammation means chronic oxidative stress at the follicle, and that is the mechanism itself. Hydrogen peroxide builds up faster than the body clears it, bleaching the strand from within while damaging the pigment cells. She thought she was preventing dandruff. Number 9. Every Saturday night, 20 minutes. Fingertips, never nails. The black woman doing it worked small circles from the hairline to the nape. The rule about nails was not politeness. A scratched scalp is an inflamed scalp. What the massage did is blood flow. The pigment cells at the base of a follicle are the most demanding cells in it, and the first to fail when supply drops. That is why hair keeps growing long after it stops growing dark. The follicle survives on less. The pigment cells do not. 20 minutes a week for 50 years is 800 hours of blood flow to the structure that fails first. They called it Saturday. The next 3 cost nothing at all. And number 6 is the one almost everybody gets wrong, including people who grew up watching it done. Number 8, and if you know one thing on this list already, it is this one. The black grandmother wrapped her head before it hit the pillow, every night. The reason usually given is that it keeps the style, and that is the smallest part of it. Cotton pulls moisture out of hair and drags against the cuticle for 8 hours a night, and across a lifetime that is enormous mechanical damage. Here is why it matters for gray. A gray strand is weaker than a pigmented one, coarser, more porous, more brittle. So when breakage works through a head, it takes the gray strands first, and short, right up near the scalp, which means she has a head where the gray sits concentrated at the surface, reading as far more gray than she has. Number 7. In that Mississippi household, the head was washed on Saturday and not again until the next Saturday. Heating water on a wood stove was an hour of work and real fuel, but the effect ran past the practical. The soaps then were closer to lye than anything sold now, and every wash stripped the scalp bare of its own oil. A scalp stripped bare has to rebuild, and while it rebuilds, it is exposed and reactive. Exposed means inflamed, and inflammation at the scalp is oxidative pressure on the follicle underneath. Washing weekly gave that barrier 6 days to hold for every day stripped. There is a version of this sold back to people now as a wellness practice. It was a kettle and no wood to spare for a second one. Number 6. The hot comb sat on the stove eye and was tested on newspaper first. If the paper scorched brown, it waited. Then the rule most people forget. It did not start at the scalp. It started a finger width down from the root and pulled outward, and the last quarter inch was left alone. Every black woman who pressed hair professionally enforced that rule, because a comb laid flat against the scalp burns, and a burn at the scalp is a burn at the follicle. The pigment cells live in a reservoir at the base of the follicle, and unlike the cells that grow hair, they do not replace themselves. Damage them badly enough, and that follicle grows white hair for the rest of its life. Not gray, white, permanently. That finger width of restraint is the difference between a head that grays evenly and one that goes white in patches. Number 5, and if you are watching this in August, this is the one that matters today. There was a good hat on the shelf and a work hat by the back door. The second one did the job. Hanging washing, walking to the bus, sitting on a porch in August. The black woman who worked outdoors kept her head covered all day. Ultraviolet exposure is a documented accelerator of graying through the same mechanism. Sun drives oxidative load. That load overwhelms the enzyme system meant to clear hydrogen peroxide from the follicle, and the peroxide bleaches the strand while damaging the pigment cells. A woman with her head covered took a fraction of the ultraviolet dose of the woman beside her with her head bare. Across 40 years, that is one of the largest variables here. Number 4, and this is uncomfortable, so I will say it plainly. The black women who held their color into their 70s were, with few exceptions, the ones who never took up the habit. In most of these black households, it was simply not done by the women. Not a health decision, a rule about how you carried yourself. But the number is stark. Smokers are roughly 2.5 times more likely to gray before 30, and that holds after researchers control for age and inherited pattern. Smoking floods the body with free radicals, the antioxidant system gets overrun, and the follicle is one of the first places it shows. So a rule about conduct, kept 60 years for reasons unrelated to hair, had a measurable effect on hair. 3 left, and the last is what the whole list rests on. Before that, if you have been listening and thinking you would try 2 or 3 of these, but do not know where to start, that is what the complete vault is for. At blackgrandmasvault.com, every method with the actual amounts, in the order they were used. blackgrandmasvault.com. Number 3. Number 3. In August, when the heat came up past 90, that house stopped. The black grandmother laid down in the front room with her shoes off and the radio low, and no child made noise for 2 hours. Every week, without exception. Rest gets treated as the soft item on lists like this. It is not soft here. Chronic stress depletes the stem cell pool that produces the pigment cells, and once that pool is gone, it does not refill. That is the line between graying you can influence and graying you cannot. A shortage you can correct, an emptied reservoir you cannot. So, the most protective thing here looks like doing nothing. Those women did not rest because they had time. They rested because you did not work through the worst heat of the day. 2 left, and the next one is the only item on this list that is about something they refuse to do. Number 2, when the first gray strand showed at the temple of a black woman in her 40s, it was left where it was. There was a saying about pulling one out and 7 coming to the funeral. That is not true the way it was meant. Pulling one strand does not turn 7 others, but the instruction was right, and the reason is better than the saying. Repeated plucking traumatizes the follicle. Do it to the same one enough times, and the structure is permanently damaged, and it does not return to making pigment. It produces nothing, or it produces white. So the woman who plucked every gray strand she found spent 10 years, turning a manageable gray into a permanent one follicle at a time. Everything here works slowly and with the follicle. Plucking works instantly and against it. Number 1, not a rinse, not a food, not a habit. Every woman here was doing all 19 of the things we covered, not one out of fear. That distinction is the entire thing. There is a way of caring for yourself that comes from keeping what works, and a way that comes from fear. They look identical from outside and produce different lives. The black woman taking her spoon every morning for 50 years was not at war with her own head. She did the same small correct thing daily the way she swept the porch. When the gray came anyway, and for most of them it did, she wore it upright and without apology. And that is not separate from the science. A woman who spends 20 years anxious about her hair is doing more damage than every rinse here can undo. So the last thing here is the one that made the other 19 work. 20 things. A drugstore bottle, a jar of walnut hulls, a pot of sage, the water off the greens, sulphur at the scalp, a scarf every night, and the discipline to leave one strand alone. Then the last one, which is why the other 19 held. Go back to that shop in Memphis. 11 women, 34 to 71, and you cannot tell them apart. Now you know what it took. About 6 things a week and 40 years. I will see you in the next one.